You will be live soon, and I'll be switching off my camera and video, and you'll be good to go.
Okay.
Yep, you're on.
Okay. And are you seeing my slide, Raja?
Yes, I can, Steve.
Okay, good, 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 good. Well, welcome. We're going to do a breakout today. We're going to talk about the most important product, which is you. And I find a lot of people get into product management and struggle sometimes with looking for new jobs because they think it's something they never do. When in fact, what you're doing in a job hunt is product management. So that's what we'll talk about today. Before we go too far, let me thank our sponsor for this session, who is Carnegie Mellon School of Computer Science. So welcome to this session and to Product Camp Pittsburgh. I think it's going pretty well so far. And let me tell you a little bit about me. Here's my coordinates. If you want to tweet about me or connect with me through LinkedIn, you can access these links. And let me start with a little history. So, in college, I majored in marketing and minored in computer science, which in those days pretty much made me unemployable. So I took a job as a developer and worked for a couple of years. And my boss did the kindest thing that has ever happened to me. He recommended that I look for a job with a buddy of his. And I'm like, hey, I'll work harder. And he's like, no, 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 I think you'd really enjoy this. He's hiring for a sales engineer. And that's certainly not a job I ever heard about when I was in college. So I interviewed for this job. And if you're not familiar with the term, a sales engineer works like this: two people go on a sales call. One of them knows the product, the other one drives the car. So in this case, the sales engineer knows the product. And so I did that for a couple of years and then realized, well, heck, I can drive a car. So I moved into sales and found out there was more to selling than just driving the car. You know, you also have to buy lunch and discount. Uh, but anyway, so suddenly I became the number one sales rep for my product. And my boss said, I don't know what you're doing, but could you do it to the rest of the office? And so I trained the office. I put together a product playbook and I trained the office on how to sell this product. Suddenly, my office is outselling the country. My VP called me and said, "Man, I don't know what you did to Virginia, but come do it to the rest of the country." So I did this road show and trained all the offices between here and corporate. And when I was at corporate in Los Angeles, the VP of marketing came up and said, "Dude, who are you and what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm just a sales guy from Virginia. I'm out training salespeople how to sell this product." And the VP said, "But that's not your job. That's the product manager's job." And I said, "Oh, you know, gosh, I didn't realize that." And the product manager was standing next to me, and he said, "I didn't realize that either." So the VP hired me as product manager, whatever that means. And it turns out, in retrospect, what he really hired me to do was product marketing. But nonetheless, my career path is not atypical. I think a lot of product managers stumble into the job kind of by accident. So, you know, I went from developer to technical sales rep to a sales rep to a product manager, and then moved up through the ranks to ultimately be the head of a marketing group. And then a buddy of mine started pragmatic marketing. So a couple of years in, he called me and said, "I'm making a living. Why don't you come join me?" So I started instructing product managers and product marketing people. And then a few years ago, started my own company as I coach people in how to do the mechanics of product management. And what I've encountered when I talk to hiring managers, so I'll be doing, you know, my consulting work, and somebody will say, "Well, you know, hey Steve, can you recommend somebody to, you know, come into our team?" And I go, "Yeah, you know, tell me what are you looking for?" And they say a lot of words that ultimately translate to they're looking for what's called a purple squirrel. They're looking for a candidate with a perfect combination of skills, education, and experience who will work for peanuts. They're also known as unicorns, except unicorns can't be found in nature, neither can purple squirrels. But it seems that we ask for the hiring manager is asking for an impossible hire. They say, well, we really need somebody who knows technology. They need to know the market. They need to have, kind of a business background, and they also need to know our domain, and they also need to have a lot of experience in operations. Um, and oh, it's better if you live within 3 minutes of the office. And every time you add a requirement, it becomes more and more difficult to find anybody who fits in the Venn diagram. And in this particular one, there is no overlap in all of these, right? Um, so it's frustrating if you're thinking of moving into product management, or if you're in product management looking for a new gig, when they're talking about this impossible hire. And we'll explore that today. But while we're at it, if you're in a product management role today, you know what? If you're not having fun, then maybe it's time to get another job. And the key here is you're being hired to solve a problem. You're being hired to solve a buyer's problem, and it's not about you. You need to be a solution to the problem. And yet I encounter often people saying things like, "Well, I need a job, and I need health care, and I need," and the buyer has no interest in that. The buyer is interested in solving a problem. We're building a new product, and we need somebody to guide the development team in the building of the product. So totally reset your head, go back into product management mode and say, my job as a product manager is to know the market, know the technology, and represent the market to the developers. And while we're at it, represent the technology to uh, our marketing team and our sales team and our executive team. So we're being hired to solve a problem. And as we think about now looking at the job of product management, uh, it's also helpful to think about what's best for you. What kind of a company do you want to work for? I worked for a company with Greg Katikia, who kicked things off earlier today. And Greg and I worked for a $1 billion software company, and my experience there was pretty horrible in that there was so much process, there was so many approvals. You couldn't do anything without having something signed off by legal and sales and an executive, and it was just impossible to get anything done. And so I got recruited into a startup, and I was super excited about it. And I got to the startup, and I'm like, hallelujah, they have no process. And a week later, I was pulling my hair out because they had no freaking process. It was driving me insane. Um, and almost instantly, I found myself building a playbook. Almost instantly, I'm like, let's implement a little bit of process, not a lot, just a little bit, just enough that we're not all over the place. So I found working for a huge company didn't really satisfy me, but it may satisfy you. I know many people who say, I like the big company, I like the networking, I like the better computers and the nicer offices. There's a lot of things about a big company that are attractive. Big Christmas parties and holiday parties and whatever. Um, but as you think about, if you've got enough history to ponder, look back maybe at places you've worked, or you look forward at places you might want to work, and start by saying, what kind of company do I want to work for? Not just I need a job, who's hiring, but think about the kind of company you want to work for. Do you want to be working in a startup where they haven't yet found product market fit? Do you want to work in a more established company where uh, it's more about maintenance and improving and optimizing? And then think as well, what kind of team do you like to work with? Do you like working with developers, which is what you'll be doing as a product manager? Or would you rather work with sales and marketing? It's funny, I come out of sales and marketing, and yet I prefer working with developers. I like their precision. I like their passion. I like their mission. in general. And uh, and yet I have other friends who say, "Oh gosh, I find developers so incredibly tedious, and they don't care for their precision and their passion. They much more focus on the marketing aspects." And in my own example, my first job as product manager, really, I was working with sales and marketing. I was optimizing the playbook. I was empowering the sales team. I was working closely with marketing on programs. I enjoyed the work, but as you reflect, are you really more of a product manager working with developers? Or are you really more of a product marketing person focused on getting the product to market? And here's how I delineate it, just for what it's worth. A product manager is about finding problems in the market and enabling development to solve them. A product marketing person is finding problems in the market that prevent the product we have now from selling. They're looking for friction in the market, in the buying cycle. And then they work with marketing to address those problems. So here's a weird way of thinking about it: product marketing is to corporate marketing or Marcom as product management is to development. In both cases, we need to represent the market, we need to understand their problems, and then we take those problems either to development to build a feature or to marketing to build a campaign or a tool or a training or a video. So, as you think about that, let's take it a little bit finer. I'm a partner in an organization called Quartz. It's an open source framework for product management, and as we think about the kind of work we see product managers doing, some are doing the blue stuff, the business aspect of product management. They're discovering problems in the market, they're coming up with ideas for what products we ought to build, and then they build a business case. Um, the tan boxes there are, we have found a problem and we've got a business case, or we've got a business in place. We need to describe that problem to our dev team so they can create a solution. In the purple area, or the maroon, or whatever that area is, um, we have found problems in the market that are preventing us success in the way we deliver products to market. So we need to do a better launch, or we need to do a better sales enablement, or we need to do better sales training so that our sales and marketing teams can better connect with the market. So as you reflect on your skill set and your experience and the kind of work you like doing, you probably gravitate to one of these three colors. And one way of thinking about it is, when you take on a new product or a new project, what's the first Microsoft Office program you run? If the very first thing you do is run a spreadsheet, you bring up Excel and start processing numbers, you're probably a blue person here, more of a strategic product manager. If the first thing you do is you bring up a Word document, you start typing maniacally about problems and personas and the details of what the product would be, you're probably a tan person, a product manager, a or a product owner perhaps. And if your first application is PowerPoint, you're probably a purple person. You're probably a product marketing manager, or what I like to call a product growth manager. And so, one of the difficulties when you start thinking about looking for work is, well, hang on, what kind of work are you looking for? Are you more strategic? Are you more technical? Or are you more oriented to go to market? And that's what you're selling. Your spreadsheet, I mean, sorry, your resume is actually a spec sheet. It's not a good marketing tool. It says, here's what I can do. I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And it's like reading the back of a sales sheet where it talks about operating system support and uptime and how we do the cloud and multi-tenant, and it's all specs. But people don't buy things based on specs. They buy things based on how can you apply your skills to my problem, which is why it's so critical to think of this as a buying selling scenario. I'm a product manager looking for work. I need to find customers employers who I can help solve their problem. And you know what? It's actually kind of hard to figure out what exactly your skills are, because you're like, well, hang on, I was a programmer here and I was a sales rep there, and I don't know how that really translates to specific skills. So here's the tool I want to share with you. Use the mnemonic aspire. Use it as a way of inventorying your skills in ways that are meaningful to our buyers, to our potential employers, right? So um, the aspire stands for, where do you have authority? What is your reputation? What systems have you mastered? What is your passion or your purpose? Have you innovated anything? Have you created something that is unique to you? Have you done research? Like, the paper I did in college was all about how blockchain is going to change the thing that blockchain's going to whatever. What is your areas of expertise? And let me drill down on that just a bit. So authority is about, what is your reputation or what are you known for? And it may be, if you're early in your career, that you're not actually known for that. But hang on, let's go back to our colleagues, let's go back to our former bosses and say, dude, could you help me work on my reputation? Could you endorse me for a skill or a set of skills on my LinkedIn profile? And here's a trick. If you don't have a lot of clicks, a lot of I don't know if I'm visualizing this in my head, but in LinkedIn, after you get past the resume bit, there's a whole bunch of things of, you have these proven skills. Look at that list based on what people have said. Oh, he's good at, product strategy, he's good at product development, he's good at whatever. um, Look at one of those things and say, I actually want to be known more for my product marketing than my product management, or the opposite, right? M- Favorite that skill, and then contact all your friends and say, would you please come in and endorse me for that skill so it's one of my top three? Because you can only have like three that are your favorites. And just bump up your votes. It's a little bit of growth hacking, if you will, on your skills as they're shown in LinkedIn, because really LinkedIn is your living resume, right? People are going to look at that more than they will look at your actual resume. But it starts by, when people talk about you, they say, gosh, he's pretty technical and he really gets stuff done. Oh gosh, she's really good at customer discovery, she really gets things done. What are you known for? And get your former boss and your former colleagues to endorse you, and recommend you in your LinkedIn profile. And that's ways that you can build your reputation. Secondly, think about systems. We live in a world of systems, and I'm super big on systems. I mean, when I was selling, I was like, hang on, I need a playbook. That's a system, right? um, I'm reading. Well, I won't do that. So what are the systems that that you're certified in these methods? I'm a Scrum product owner. I'm Safe certified. I'm Pragmatic certified. I'm ISPMA certified, whatever. Um, what are the systems that you know? And one of the difficulties for product managers, I'm sorry, for people who want to be product managers, is you don't necessarily know the systems of product management. You don't have necessarily the metaphors of understanding the difference between buyers, um, uh, existing customers, buying customers, and non-customers, for instance. So you may not know the nomenclature of product management, and those are some of the systems as well. What about passion, or if you will, purpose? I mean, Simon Sinek said, what is your why? And he applied it to, companies. The great companies today are focused on the why of things more than they are the what of things. So what is your why? What kind of work excites you? Because at the end of the day, It's this that keeps you going when things go bad. If you're in a crunch, you're in we're in the last stages of development and a lot of things are going badly, or we're in the last stages of launch and things are going badly. Um, if the work excites you, if you enjoy doing the work, a lot of the noise disappears. If it's work you don't really like doing, it's really painful. So it's helpful as you think about, what kind of work do you like doing? Do you love giving presentations? Do you love creating roadmaps? Do you love facilitating sessions? What are the things that you love doing that you don't want to do this, but it's the kind of stuff that you would do if you weren't being paid for it? And of course, you do want to be paid for it, but well, talking about product management on a Saturday is a passion for me. I hope it is for you as well. I get calls all the time from developers who say, you know what, I've created something. I've invented something. I've innovated something. And I now need to go find people for it. And that's actually backwards, right? What you're supposed to do is identify problems, go through, design thinking and come up with an innovation to solve the problem in a unique way. But I digress. It could be in your past that you've created a method or an approach, or maybe you've created a wiki that has lots of uh, uh, templates that you've assembled together from the best practices in building products today. Cool. That's a great illustration of your ability to innovate a solution. The next one is research. Perhaps you've done some research in college, for instance. And I had a really funny case. A buddy of mine, pretty soon out of college, had created an app to help you work on your romantic relationships. Your significant other. And I, I said, explain that to me again. And he said, well, like for instance, we'll recommend through the app that you haven't bought your wife flowers in a while. And I'm like, well, hang on. First of all, my wife hates flowers. Because she hates spending the money for it. But secondly, who are you to tell me? I've been married longer you've been alive. How can you tell me anything about relationships? And he said, oh, it's based on research. And he pulled out all this research about, the five love languages and stuff going back to the 50s, of all sorts of stuff about communication plays into uh, good relationships. And so it wasn't just, I think you ought to buy your spouse flowers. I think you ought to, go to more bed and breakfasts as a getaway. It was grounded in research. And so maybe there's an area where you have deep uh, domain expertise through the research that you've done, even though you may not have the next one, which is experience. And this one, frankly, is the most difficult for most of us because the buyers, the hiring managers, are mostly interested in your experience. They think your college is cute, and they think, the fact that you've done some things is cute, but fundamentally, they're looking for somebody who can hit the ground running. So we need to be able to call out really strongly in our conversations, as well as any cover letter or emails that we write, about how we have experience solving this kind of problem. Just as a product manager, you would do customer discovery to understand the problems that customers are facing. Here you want to do customer discovery with a potential hiring manager to understand what problems they have, so that in your so that in your cover letter, you can show how your experience maps directly to the problems they're trying to solve. And this is where, a degree from uh, uh, a degree or a master's degree in product management would be good. This is where certifications could be good. We've just embarked on a project with Quartz to offer certifications for product managers that are not tied to a specific um, set of proprietary methods. So that's something for you to explore if you're trying to build up your expertise. And the real issue is, I know you can get the job, but if you get the job, can you do the job? And that's what expertise is all about. And the part that is most frustrating, I think, is David Cancel said, what we really value is people who are learning machines, who are highly adaptable, um, not so much people who have experience. And one funny story of that is, J.C. Penney hired what's his name, Johnson, Ron Johnson, maybe, from Apple to lead their reboot at J.C. Penney. And he said, you know what I'm going to do? The same thing I did at Apple. So they tried to turn J.C. Penney stores into Apple stores, and they panicked and fired him after like 18 months. But he was only bringing experience, and maybe I'm oversimplifying that. I shouldn't diss on this guy who I don't know, but I love this quote from David. He's like, be a learning machine so that you can look beyond your experience. And my hope is that you put all of that together and you've got a really powerful set of abilities that you can adapt or apply to the specific jobs that you're looking for. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner here, here's a link, u10.me/aspire. And I've got an ebook on how to use this technique for defining these attributes as capabilities for a company. And there's also there an ebook on applying these attributes to you as an individual. Ultimately, searching for a job can be fun, but it's also frustrating. But here's the thing, it's something you already know how to do. It's like a sales job, right? You get leads, right? Your friends tell you there's an opening in their company, or LinkedIn sends you a note saying that, there's an opening in your area for your skill set, or you sign up for an alert on Indeed, and then you engage with the hiring manager and you present yourself. And then they evaluate you and you evaluate them, and then they make you an offer, and then you have a job. And isn't that exactly how um, looking for a job works? Just exactly how selling works. Let me pause here for a second and see if any questions are in the queue. And golly, looks like none. Um, at the end of this section, if we've got time, I'm going to come back to that Aspire idea. But meanwhile, here's the really scary part, because I didn't scare you enough so far. This is how your resume looks to HR. They take your resume, they process it in some scanning software, and it's just words. And I shouldn't tell this story because it sounds like a lie, but my first job was an accident. Um, I was signed up, and this is something that only like three of you are going to get. It's really funny. I signed up for a course at my college on how to do job control language, which is known as JCL. And I put it on my resume, and then they canceled the class because there were only two people who signed up for the class. And um, I'd already printed my resumes. And in those days, I didn't, I went to a printer. I mean, right, I took it and had it typeset and printed, and I printed 500 resumes. And I'm not going to go back through and reprint 500 resumes. So I just left it on there. And HR chose my resume because it had JCL on it. And that caused them to interview me. And then the interview went great. And then during, at the level, I think somewhere around the offer, I finally fessed up and I said, I got to tell you, they actually canceled my JCL class. And the buyer said, oh yeah, I don't care. I mean, the hiring manager said, I don't care. But if I had not put it on my resume, my first employer would never have known, would never have seen my resume. So it's really important to get your keywords right in search engine optimization. Hey, these are things that product managers already know how to do. Um, So, Jonathan asked, what are some things an undergraduate student can do to improve their expertise section in regards to product management, especially while still in school? Good one. I've got a couple of slides coming that may speak to that, but fundamentally, look for, well, actually, things like this. Get involved with Product Camp as a volunteer. Um, get involved in things at church or in community things, and use that to build your experience and your resume. So, for instance, real quick, um, I'm reading the questions while I'm answering another question. Excuse me. Um, I did an event at church where I accidentally applied my product management skills. They had planned an evening event, and they were planning on charging like $5 a person for this evening event. And I flipped everybody out by saying, well, we have to start with understanding our competitor. And when you're in church and talking about God, competitor is, tricky. So everybody was like, ugh. But the bottom line is they were building a product that competed with dinner and a movie. So I priced their product at $150 a couple instead of $5 a person. And we sold every seat, uh, because I identified the problem we were solving, right? We were providing babysitter, we were providing entertainment, we were providing dinner. That's an evening out. It's not competing with McDonald's. Let's go swing through and get some bad food for dinner. We're competing with an evening out, and using that skill is something one could put in your resume. It may be a silly example, but it's looking for ways to show your skills in a meaningful way. So, as I said a moment ago, your resume is a spec sheet. It says, these are my capabilities, generally in, like bullet form, Scrum, safe, whatever. The Your email or your cover letter is your marketing slick. It's your sales piece. It's where you explicitly say, I have read your resume. I mean, I've read your job posting. Here are the things on my resume that show that I can do that job. And back to the earlier question, I found two things that were kind of interesting. This guy, Tudor, was looking for a job as a designer. And so he chose to do a design on iTunes. iTunes a few years ago was just an absolute mess. It was a hub of media, and it didn't do anything really that well. Um, so he mocked up what he thought an iTunes should look like, and and put that in his portfolio of design work. Here's another guy. He created what appears to be an Amazon page for him as a web product manager, including, he's got these features: dual competence, technical management, 5+ years working, entrepreneurial mindset, strong generalists. He's trilingual. Um, and I went back to it sometime later and saw that he had actually gotten the job, and he changed it to zero left in stock. I thought that was a brilliant way of articulating, um, a way of presenting yourself in a problem oriented way, if you will. So you do the Aspire thing, and I see Larry has put a link to my ebook on Aspire. Um, you do the Aspire thing to help figure out what your capabilities are, and then you do something else. April talked about it just a while back, where we talked about our positioning. And I will say, April doesn't really like the positioning statement, trying to cram everything into one sentence, and I agree with that. But if you have a positioning format, and this is the one that is, um, most commonly used in agile methodologies, and it goes back to crossing the chasm. Um, It says it helps. I think it helps you articulate clearly what you're looking for. I'm looking in a target market for a company who is facing a certain kind of challenge. I am a kind of person. I'm a persona with relevant experience, unlike something about other candidates. And then the proof using Aspire, right? So here was an example on the right of how you might do that as a product manager looking for a job in Boston. So I'm looking for a software vendor in Boston who are creating a new product management team as opposed to maybe one where it's already established. Who are you? I'm a senior technology order product manager with 6 years experience in education. So obviously I'm looking in education, and I'm different because and this is true. So many product managers in education are former teachers who know how about teaching, but they don't know about product management or technology. And so my resume shows the following things that came from our Aspire worksheet. So the idea here is Aspire helps you identify what makes you special, and positioning helps you articulate it crisply in terms of your competition, the market you want to serve, and the problems that you can solve. And for what it's worth, I don't know if this is valuable. This is salary information from Pragmatic Marketing's annual survey. Last year, they found that product marketing and product management were making roughly 118,000. It's interesting. This has changed. Product marketing is now making more, a little bit more than product management, and that is different than it used to be. But the other interesting aspect is the definitions of these two terms. Product management, I'll start on the left. Product marketing is about creating and executing go to market strategies for products. That is, now that we have a product, um, how do we get it sold? Whereas product management is, what is the product? What are we going to put in the product? And my friend Jim used to say product management is about determining what goes on the shelves, and product marketing is about getting those products to fly off the shelves, which is actually why I guess there's a little paper airplane there. So at the end of this, taking this away, think about, who are you? I mean, what are your capabilities? And as you look at some of these things, also kind of give yourself a score. What is my authority? And gosh, maybe you're young in your career, you don't have that much authority. So what are some ways that you can build that? Ways like speaking at this conference next year, engaging with other communities like on Facebook or wherever, and starting to build up your reputation. And so as you look at these, you may say, I'm deficient in this area or that. Great. That means you need to apply some attention to it so that you can say, well, for instance, real quick, I had a buddy a few years ago. Well, one of my employees said, I am a product manager, but I'm more interested in product marketing. In particular, I'd like to. I'd like to know how to do, a big industry event. Could I could I learn how to do trade shows? And so I went to our event planner and said, "Hey, can you mentor him on trade shows?" And uh, the first one, he just watched everything she did. The second one, he mostly did the work while she mentored him. And then the third one he did by himself with her just in hovering in the wings. And so his resume was different, right? He had identified a particular type of expertise that he wanted to add to his resume, and I helped him build that out. So here's the bottom line here. You're a product manager. Um, sorry, as a product manager or as a wannabe product manager, you are a product. So use your skills, your product management and marketing skills, to sell yourself as a product. That means understanding the buyer, the employer, the problems they're trying to solve, and the other products that they're evaluating. What makes you, what do you have that can solve their problem, and what makes you different than everyone else? If you would like to stay in touch with me, here's my coordinates: Steve at Under 10 Consulting. Also on Twitter, S Johnson717. My LinkedIn profile, you can get through a redirect from u10.me/S Johnson717. And if you're interested in certifying in product management, send me an email or follow the link to u10me/quartz and sign up, and we'll send you a discount code for our certification. But let me stop sharing and go back to the questions that have come in. Well, these are long questions. Um, yes, okay, Larry, good question. Larry was talking about moving up the chain, and one of the big issues that I have encountered, and I believe this is still universally true, it's really hard to move diagonally. You either need to move horizontally from one company to another and then move up, or you need to move up and then move over. But typically, what I've seen is it's really difficult for someone to say, I'm not a product manager. I would like to be a product manager, and apply for a job as a product manager when you have not had that job previously. You can do it within your company. So if you're in a business analyst role or a product owner role or a dev lead role or a scrum master role, and you say, I really want to be in product management, make that known to the head of product management and say, when a job comes up, I'd like to be considered. But meanwhile, be helpful to them. Product managers are often doing a lot of things and they could certainly use some help. So, if you can become a friend to the product management group, you're likely to find that you're uh, the first person they think of when it's time for them to hire a new product manager. But in my experience, it's been a lot easier to move up in a company and then move over to another company than to try and do up and over at the same time. And one other little trick there is, go to a smaller company to get more title. Go to a bigger company to get more money. So it may be, you're a product manager and you want to be a director. Great. Go to a smaller company and take a horizontal pay move. It's like you're making 120 now, you're going to make 120 in the new company, and they can't give you more money, but they can give you more title. And then you take your director title and go to a bigger company and go for the more money that way. So that's a fairly common technique for moving diagonally in a couple of steps. Um, the other thing, just to depress people, you're probably going to have 10, 12, 15 jobs in your career. You don't have to do everything in one job move. So it's more like chess now. You need to be thinking a couple of moves ahead. I make this move for the money, I make that move for the title, I then make a move for the money. Um, did that one. Yeah, I had a couple of questions about product marketing versus product management. So let me speak to that again. Um, in a small company, uh, product management and product marketing is one thing. But here's what's happened over time with the introduction of Agile back in the late 90s. Scrum introduced the idea of a product owner, and sadly, one of the things that has happened is product owner has not evolved the way the book described. The writing on Scrum described a product owner as a business person. In reality, product owner has become a secretary to development. They've become a business analyst. They've become a project manager. I'm shocked the number of times I hear product owners say, I have never talked to a customer. because the number one thing that development needs from a product owner is customer knowledge. So, um, as development has pulled product management into the operations of product, we're seeing a lot of companies embrace product marketing to do both the go to market as well as the business planning bits in a smaller company. It, in a small again in a small company, it's usually one role, and yet the reality is it's two or three roles, and you end up really only doing one of those three. And then as time goes by and we realize you've been subsumed into the development world, then we hire a product marketing manager above. But in effect, the original statement was product management is about defining what product we'll build. Product marketing is defining how we're going to get that product into the market. And if we have those two roles, they should very much overlap. They should be connected at the hip, because at the end, we both need the same things. So, with that, I have reached the end of my time. Raja, do you want to jump back in?
Yep. So you can go for a few minutes if you want,
Oh,
Steve.
okay.
Else we
All
can go
right,
back.
cool. Ah, okay. Que- um, Boy, I don't actually have a very good answer to Robin and Jessica's question about the resume gap. Um, I I've never, as a hiring manager, worried about that. If you've taken a leave of absence, or you've gone on a long maternity leave, or you've done something to care for your parents, and you've kind of gone offline for a while, how do you come back? And I don't I th- I feel that your resume should just say that. Let's embrace it. I took a year and a half off because my father had a heart attack. I did, but I left a position as a product manager, and I'm coming back as a position as a product manager. And yet I had a friend who, went off and had babies and was out for like 10 years, and she tried to come back, and she ended up having to go down a step. And maybe that was impatience on her part, and maybe it's just reality. But when you do have a gap in your career, I think you need to just be able to explain it. But if you can ultimately in your resume say, or in your cover letter, or in your discussions say, I'm still perfectly qualified, right? I have this skill and this skill and this skill and this skill. I see no reason why the gap should have any impact on employability or the money you would make. But I'm also a guy, so I can't speak about that from firsthand experience. I've never taken a leave of absence, or I've never had a baby, so I know there's a different reality. But as a hiring manager, I certainly don't want to. I hope that I would not make decisions based on whether you had a baby or not. Okay, interesting question from Juhi. How to deal with situations when even entry level product management require positions require 3 to 4 years of previous experience. I hear you. Mostly, you know what? Jeff Moore said way back in 1988 when he wrote Crossing the Chasm, product management is not an entry level job. It's uh, it's an experienced job. And yet, I hear your point. I mean, how do you can't get the job if you don't have experience doing the job, but you can't get experience until you get the job. This is where you look for opportunities to show your experience through community, through being using those techniques on something other than a company, because like at church or in community affairs or in the local community theater, whatever, there are ways that you can use these skills and have that build your portfolio. But let me say, I think a lot of MBA programs say, we've trained you to be a president, go get the job now as a president. Well, you're not ready. I think a lot of programs, you come out and say, well, I'm ready to be a product manager. how do I get the experience? Well, the answer may be to go be a sales engineer. It may be to go be a scrum master and then build credibility in your organization so you can move up.
Yeah. I think that should be it, Steve. So
Okay,
thank you, everyone, and thank you, Steve, especially for the amazing talk. So,
great. I hope you'll feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn or Twitter or through email. My website is under10consulting.com. You can find lots of ways to connect with me there. And for some of you, in 10 more minutes, I'm going to do a weird presentation. I'm going to talk about certification and education in product management, doing everything through Mentimeter. So it's going to be super fun or an incredible disaster. And either way, it'll be funny. All right. So see you in 10 minutes for my next session on certification and education in product management.